And we're up. Good morning, Steve.
Morning. How are you?
Good. How do I introduce you? So farmers are my favourite people. I have a bit of I don't even know how to explain it. My grandparents were farmers, farm vets, and my great-grandparents were farmers.
Yeah.
And I've never grown up on a farm, but I have this, like, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's in our blood when we're just passionate about something. And I just, thank you for coming on when you guys are like ridiculously busy. And Gareth came on the podcast and I messaged Gareth a couple of weeks ago. I think it was only a couple of weeks ago, just to say, how can I help? And he said, you've got to speak to Steve. And here we are. So for everyone listening, the reason for this podcast is because I'm devastated by like what you guys deal with, and also feel responsible as a consumer. And I also feel it's important to have you guys have a platform to speak so that people understand not just where their food comes from, but the humans that work really freaking hard to produce it. And so I don't know where this podcast is going to go, but I do know that I really want to hear your story, everything that you're up to, what you deal with. And also the piece to add in that you're possibly not aware of is I effectively am good at money and business. And I'm like, where can I add into farming? Because one of our dreams is we're working up towards buying a farm, right? Which most farmers, including my grandmother, said, you're mental. There's no money in it. And it's a terrible idea, which you're going to tell me as well. And I'm like, yeah, but if everyone keeps getting out of farming and no one finds a way to help and make it better, where do we end up? Like, where does that go? So I'm also coming at this from really wanting to understand farming, farmers, what you deal with, and how we can start as a community of people that aren't in farming, start bringing what we know into what you know and finding a way that you guys make money and that you produce food in a way that doesn't literally kill you in various different ways or have you, leave the industry. So I really care about this subject, and I thank you for coming on and speaking, because most farmers are busy as well. You are busy, right? Look, but it's like, it matters to have this conversation.
It is busy. Yeah. And look, thanks for the opportunity, because yes, you're seeing quite a bit of it in the press at the moment. There's a number of campaigns going on. There's a number of protests or demonstrations. Our livelihoods are very much at threat at the moment through sort of policy change and restrictions. It's an interesting one. There's an old saying, how do you make a small fortune out of farming? Well, you start off with a big one, because that's ultimately what it is at the moment. And it's quite interesting to hear your background, is money and finance. Well, if you looked at agriculture, food production as a producer, so us at the sort of prime, at the start of the chain, we are the worst rewarded in the whole supply chain. It's extremely volatile. All the risk is sitting within the farm gate. We're a family business. I'm fourth generation on my farm, fifth generation following on with me now. He's he'll be 24 next month. And it's, the hours are long. The reward is slim, but ultimately you have to absolutely love it, or there is just no point doing it. But I guess that's the same for any industry that you own, or any business that you own. You have to do it. It's what motivates you. But with regards to family businesses, particularly farming, we are pretty strong on governance, because we have to be, and we probably micromanage, but we have to. I mean, every between Christmas and New Year, every year we set the budget for the coming year. We are the 27th, 28th of February today.
27th.
We've already redone the budget 4 times. It's because things are changing that fast, and currently we're a dairy farm. We
do you want to go back a little bit?
Sure.
Just give us like the history of the farm,
Yeah.
how your great grandparent, and like give us a timeline so everyone gets a sense of the farm and what you do and day to day. And
yeah, sure. As I said, I'm a fourth generation farmer. My great grandfather was an undertaker by trade, carpenter and undertaker, and he got into farming through necessity because he had 9 children and he needed to feed the kids. So he got into farming through that, in that way, through necessity, because that was the only way to survive. And sort of around the time of the First World War and post First World War, there was no money to be had. So literally, you survived by growing and rearing everything you could yourself. Like I said, and it just sort of went on from there. And he slowly grew. He was extremely frugal. If he earned a quid, it was a prisoner.
Brilliant.
And it kind of went on from there, and it slowly turned into, well, hang on, I'm feeding my family. We've got a bit of surplus here. I could sell some of this. And it just went on from there. So he fed people and he buried people, which both ends of the spectrum there. But
the
then,
full cycle of life.
Yeah, totally. And
yeah,
it's, as I said, he had 9 children. Obviously, my grandfather was one, but there was 5 boys, 4 girls. But the 4 girls, all but one, actually married into farming families. One actually married a doctor and moved to London. But he'd, through being bloody frugal and extremely good at what he did, he managed to set up each of the sons in a farm. Yeah. Now, there was periods there where he was, yes, there is a bit of luck, but the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Yes, agreed.
So there was a little bit of luck, because what actually happened was there was a number of families, sort of almost the landed gentry, if you like, but through how can I put it, poor life choices, i.e. womanizing, boozing, gambling, a lot of these estates had to sell off blocks of land. So he was in the right place at the right time.
Wow. And
just managed to sort of develop each homestead. And so it's been interesting. My father was born in 1956. Came home to farm in 1971, I think it was 1971, 72. Mum and Dad got married in 1975. And at the time my mother was working for Midland Bank, as it was back then. And she left that job then to come home to farm. And there was periods during 70s, 80s where it was extremely rewarding to be a dairy farmer. And
hang fire, everyone. We've lost you a second. Oh, you're back. It's okay.
Yeah. Oh, can I just answer that? Okay. Can I just answer that quickly?
It might come on the live stream. This is the world of the farmers. Do you need to deal with something? Because I can take you out with the live stream for a second and pause.
I can just message the lady just quickly. It's someone who's on the farm. It is. Just bear with.
All right. No worries. This is how it goes, folks. This is what there is to deal with.
Yeah, I do apologize.
No, it's fine. This is why I don't edit the podcast, because then everyone's like, no, this is real life. This is how it is.
Hang on, bear with. Sorry about this. Okay, I do apologize. So you have to remember, in terms of pricing, etc. When my grandparents effectively started farming in their own right in the late 40s through till they officially retired in mid 90s, early 90s, the milk price never went down. It was protected by the sort of marketing board and the way it was all structured. So it was quite there wasn't a lot of risk involved. because the price either flatlined or went up.
Yeah.
So we were protected by a milk marketing board, and I left school in 1995, and the prices were quite reasonable then. And we were milking 140 cows at that point, sustaining both my grandparents, my mum and dad, myself, and my brother, who had no interest in farming but was in university, etc. And we were milking 140 cows. So roll on, best part of 30 years now, and we're milking 480 cows and still sustaining 3 families.
Wow.
It's the economics.
Yeah.
The margin has been pinched all the time, and with increased volatility, and the amount of money that leaves the farm gate in terms of cost of production is insane. And like I said, when I left school in 1995, and it was a hell of a nice way to sort of earn a living, if you like. Yes, the hours were long, but it wasn't the sort of shackle it is now, because there was a hell of a lot less regulation, hell of a lot less red tape. It wasn't as intensive, but here we are now in a position where it's become intensive because the margin's been pitiful. I nearly swore then.
I swear quite a lot on this podcast, so feel free to. And the bit you don't know about me is I was a chef for 17 years, so I've done it. It's fine.
Okay.
Don't worry.
Right. Okay. Say no more. Right. You started something now. So no, it's just an absolute tragedy what's gone on, and you're seeing people leaving the industry in their droves, not just dairy farming, but farming in general, because the reward, there is no money in it. It's literally, and we have no protection because we're self-employed. We have no protection of minimum wage. If I looked back, particularly in the last year, it was ridiculously busy. The weather wasn't great. You had to basically try and do a week's worth of work in 2 days. So it's Red Bull and nicotine, I think, got most of the agricultural industry through last year, to be honest. It's just insane. And it's someone asked me recently, what is it about agriculture? And I said, well, if you looked at it as purely as a business, you'd say, no way, Jose. It's just absolutely ludicrous. If I walked into the Dragons Den and said, look, I've got this fantastic idea. Every single person in the world is going to need it at least twice a day, and it'll never go away. They say, oh, that's fantastic. What is it? Farming. All right. What's your return? 0.25%, 0.5%. They just say, no, thank you. Well, something fundamentally has to change. And it's like there's a number of campaigns going on at the moment, because retailers are retailers, okay? The old saying, art of good business, being a good middleman. They have been damn good at it, and they have created their business model around influencing consumer wants or needs. But they've manipulated what the consumer wants. So they've done a hell of a job. But in terms of the producer, I could go on and on and on about it. From when we have inspections and audits and things like that, it's an absolute nightmare, because they can make or break you. And I don't know where this is going to end up. And it's like I said, there's a campaign at the moment, a bit more fairness and equality and integrity more than anything else within the supply chain around the economics, because we are getting bugger all out of it. Yet you see certain retailers making record profits, but as a percentage wise, they'll turn around and say, oh, well, we're only making 2.8% profit. Well, where's it going? So it's like, well, hang on, the processors and the middlemen of the middlemen are clipping the ticket significantly. So like I said, it's just about a bit of transparency around where the money actually goes, because the variation in pricing within the shop floor is insane. But it's like at the moment, we're getting sort of around the 40 pence per litre for a litre of standard milk. But it's costing us 44 to 45 pence a litre to produce it. So really speaking, you should pull the pin because it's hemorrhaging cash. You know, sort of 12, 14 months ago, milk price was 50p. You know, you're making a few quid out of it. But ultimately, this year is burning all that free cash that was made and some. And that's the thing, you're digging a bloody big hole. And it's going to take something quite remarkable to get the whole industry out of the hole. But we are seeing signs of recovery within the dairy markets. I mean, sort of Asia has stepped back into the global dairy trade for various reasons. So potentially we could reach parity on milk price cost of production by sort of late summer. But there's a hell of a lot of ifs and buts in there. Hell of a lot.
How do you carry that from a cash flow perspective? How do you handle that from a business side, with also not knowing that there's, you know, it might work out in the summer, it might not. How do you deal with that negative? and for anyone listening, like, just think about that for a minute. If you're not, you know, because most people listening to this probably aren't farmers, and there may be some that do listen because, you know, you're on. But if anyone else in any other business was doing that, you know, like, I've got rental houses, right? And if my mortgage was higher than the rent coming in, it's only so long I can handle that. And you know, it's like, how do you deal with that?
It's only so long you can burn money. And the cash burn position at the moment on our farm in particular, like I said, you know, we're sort of losing 4 pence a litre on every litre of milk, and we produce sort of 3.5 million litres of milk a year. So, you know, it's exactly. And yet last year we made roughly about 90 grand. So I've got a 30 grand hole. And the other thing you have to remember as well is I'm not making any allowances in here for anything going wrong. You know, a tractor might just decide to shit itself and be, you know, need changing. Or we've had a bit of a nightmare this year in particular. It started last July, actually. We had a disease outbreak, TB. It's a highly controversial topic within agriculture. And we'd been clear for 5.5 years. We had a test last July, and out of the blue, bearing in mind we'd tested 60 days previously, out of the blue, we ended up losing, you know, a hell of a lot of cows. And to this point, we've lost in excess of 100 cows.
And for people who don't understand all of that, put that in, like, what actually happens. So how do you test the cows? Basically, what happens to those cows? Where do they go? All of that. So that people understand.
Look, I won't dress it up. I'll say it how it is.
No, say it how it is. That's what this podcast is for.
It's an absolute bloody nightmare. We have the vets test where we are down in West Wales, where TB, bovine TB, is the prevalence of TB is quite high. So we're testing every 60 days. And that is a skin test. It's a very old test. It's as inaccurate as it is accurate. It will pick up, you know, sort of positive testing cows, but it's not the best. Okay. So every 60 days they come in and test. We'd inject them all on the Monday, which is 2 small needles with tuberculin injected on the neck. They'll come in and read them on the Thursday. If the bottom lump is bigger than the top lump, they've tested their positive reaction for TB. So what happens then is they will be removed from farm and slaughtered and post-mortemed to check for TB lesions within lungs, liver, kidneys, brain. You know, they'll have a look. But in between that, then we get compensated, okay, for the loss of the animal. We don't get compensated for the loss of the milk, just for the animal. So a valuer will come in and value the stock that are to be removed from farm. There's normally a little bit of argy-bargy because about, haggling about the value of an animal.
Well, it's like dealing with an insurance company, isn't it? Everyone will understand what that's like. That's what you're doing, yeah?
So that is agreed. The animals are then removed, taken to the abattoir, slaughtered, and then post-mortem results. They'll also send off tissue samples for culture to see, does the TB grow? And yeah, your farm is effectively on lockdown. You can't buy in, you can't sell anything. It's
for how long?
Until you go clear, and you've got to have 2 clear tests. So you could, if you're lucky, you could be back up and running and open for trading within 6 months. There are parishes down here that have been perpetually down for the best part of 20 years. And it's I've got a job to quantify the stress that brings, because in our situation now, that is costing us £30,000 to £35,000 a month, and there wasn't £30,000 to £35,000 a month in the job to start with.
So are you on lockdown at the moment?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. So since it was a couple of weeks ago that you had another 50 go, is that right? Yeah, which is when we first spoke. Okay.
Yeah. So
what do you do with all the milk? Because cows don't magically stop producing milk.
No, well, the thing is, with the milk, we can sell the milk because it's pasteurized. There's no issue there whatsoever. And it's a bit like if the livestock that go to the abattoir and removed, they, depending on if there's visual lesions, TB lesions within the carcass, that carcass will be taken away and burnt. If there's no visible lesions, it'll go into the food chain, because effectively there's nothing wrong with the meat at all in any way, shape or form. But it does go into the food chain. So as it stands at the moment, the Welsh government in particular are the largest beef barons in the UK, because there's thousands and thousands of animals being slaughtered every week because of TB. Where it gets frustrating is we were promised by Welsh government 10 years ago there was going to be a vaccine for the cattle, and yet nobody's seen anything. So it's like when the valuer came out the other week to value all those cows, it's cost Welsh government a hell of a lot of money. And I said, are you busy today? And he said, by the time I'm done today, he said, I'll probably cost the taxpayer and Welsh government 700,000 in one day through a disease that they promised us 10 years ago, a decade ago, that they were gonna have a vaccine for. So it's like I said, you can do all the budgets you want, but you get an incident like this and it absolutely smashes your balance sheet to bits. And it's like I said, you can have the greatest on-farm governance in the world, but you can't do anything about this. And what is frustrating is the rhetoric coming out of Welsh government is, vets need to do more, farmers need to do more. We can't do any more. We physically can't. You can't test the cows more. Just in the same way, we can't, sort of protect our cows anymore, because we know, particularly in our parish, we know what the issue has been. Again, it's highly controversial, but it's
badgers. We'll talk about badgers.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I don't know. Do you want to go there? But
I go there. Yeah, please do.
I'm quite happy to talk.
I'm fully prepared for if someone gets upset, then that's okay. But the problem with not having conversations and with things being controversial, I believe at the moment, is that then no one talks about it, and then no one gets educated, and no one understands what's going on. And if we don't hear all the sides of the story about what's going on, nothing ever changes. So
the Badger Trust did a badger set count on our farm back in 2019, because they were conscious, they wanted to know what was going on, and a couple of farms in the area had gone down with TB, and they just wanted to get a handle on what sort of numbers were around. And we had 17 badger sets on our farm where we graze our cows, and anyway, it was all hunky-dory. We were clear, there was no issues. Excuse me. you know, so that was fine. Then unfortunately, January, February, March last year, the local landfill site were a bit naughty, and they went and cleared a triple SI of an area around a woodland which we knew carried a lot of wildlife. Well, the rubbish tip, they needed to extend their site, so they went in unlicensed, went and cleared the triple SI, destroyed
What's
it.
triple SI?
Specific site of scientific interest.
Okay.
You know,
And they just thought, we'll just do that. And
yeah,
presumably they thought they'd apologise afterwards. Is that what?
yeah,
They
you
got
know,
caught. They said, "Oh, we're sorry." They probably got. Did they get
yeah,
fined?
it's ongoing now.
Yeah.
So it's,
But it's too late, right? Because the damage is done.
Damage is done, and we've had to put up with the carnage, you know, the sort of after effects of it, because what happened is they dispersed all the wildlife, scattered them, and over the course of a 3-month period, once we turned livestock out in April, well, like I said, we were clear up until July. So we tested 60 days before when our animals were in, no issues. Turned out in July, after they'd been out for a few months grazing, and one by one, 9 farms surrounding the landfill site have gone down with TB. So it's been accepted what is the root cause, but it's highly controversial, because where the issue comes is you can't keep on testing livestock and removing positive cows that tested positive for TB without actually looking at the other source, the other vector of the disease. And like I said, I live and work in the countryside every day. I love what I do, and I don't want to see every bloody bit of wildlife scrubbed off the face of the earth. However, you have to accept that there needs to be a targeted sort of cull of wildlife, and you know, it could be quite simple to do. You set up the perimeter, targeted trap test, and positives, culled, clean, remain, because you know you want them to stay, but it's just causing.
So why did this topic get really controversial? Because people
Killing
don't
wildlife.
want badgers killed.
Yeah, simple
But
as.
it's okay to kill cows.
Correct.
So it doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't. And
like, I'm really simple. I'm like, but that doesn't make sense. Animals are dying anyway. So why don't we have less animals die overall by getting rid of the thing that's...
They had the issue in New Zealand many years ago, and basically they found that the possums were carrying the TB, and they just went in and poisoned the possums, and within 3 years it was TB-free country. Whereas we've had 20 years of mismanagement around the disease. A decade ago we were promised a vaccine, haven't seen it, and yet, you know, there are big numbers of businesses basically going to the wall because of the disease. And just to flip things around a little bit as well, in terms of mental health, well, you know, what it's doing to morale on farm, because you're having to deal with this day in, day out, but you're fighting fires, both sort of emotionally, financially. You know, a couple of weeks ago, they came down and filmed when we were TB testing. David Knight of the British Farming Britain channel came down and filmed. Like he said, he said, I just can't get my head around this. Why has it come to this? Why has it come to this? And I said, well, you know, this is what happens when you politicize sort of veterinary and science. And you know, they've culled in areas in England and have had tremendous success. You know, 63% reduction in TB incidence within 2 years. But in Wales, it's a no-go area, and it's a shame. It's an absolute shame. But you know, I'm sure common sense will prevail at some point. And like I said, I'm not one who's, you know, wanting to kill every damn badger that walks the planet, walks the world, but it has to be tested, you know, trap tested, and if they're positive, they're removed. Even from an animal, you know, looking at it from an animal welfare point of view, I understand the concern about, oh, you know, it's cruel, barbaric, you know, culling badgers, etc. But if you see clinical signs of TB in wildlife and in cattle, that is horrific. That is absolutely. I've seen it both in wildlife and domestic animals. You know, cows, cattle. I've seen it twice, and it is, well, it's the worst of the worst. It's the worst of the worst. So yeah, that's, as I said, it's controversial because it's been made controversial.
Well, and the irony is that making it controversial and then unable to speak about it or being cautious about speaking about it means we're not talking about all the cows that are dying and all of the farmers that are dying. Actually, if you know, really, the ones that die because they commit suicide or die because actually there's a strong link between financial well-being and, you know, staying alive. You know, that's, you know, we can't ignore that statistic. So this irony of weaponizing it like that, calling it barbaric, and then kind of just going, no, we're not touching the badgers without a conversation is just mental.
Yeah.
Because it's completely ignoring the opposing cost of, but if we don't do that, then this is what happens.
Yeah. It's, I mean, like I said, it's not going to go anyway anytime soon. And what is frustrating is when you have politicians and rural affairs ministers standing on a podium and saying, oh, the picture's improving in Wales. Well, in certain areas it is, because people have got out of cows. So the TB incidence in certain counties has dropped because people have got out of keeping livestock. So there's no testing. Well, of course it's going to bloody improve.
So it makes it look better.
Yeah. So when you actually look at the data, and I'm a bit of a data nerd.
I love that you are, right? Because a lot of farmers don't have the time to do that. So it's really interesting talking to you, and you understand the figures and the costs and the margins, and that, you know, and that's not it's not being disrespectful to other farmers. This is like, I know. When you've got your hands in the land, there ain't time to be in an office looking at numbers. No. So you're actually you know, it's a really special place to be to do that, because that's what's needed to be able to have the conversations, right? So
yeah,
you know,
it is.
I think it's great.
But to me, farming is out there up to your elbows in shit.
Yeah.
Dealing with livestock, growing crops. But unfortunately, we are becoming more and more office driven, and it's like when we have the audits, when the retailers come out and do their audits, it's first thing they do when they drive on the yard is look at how visually it looks around the yard. You know, especially with us, we're on the roadside. So box tick there, you know, for a couple of flower pots around the entrance. They'll have a quick walk through the shed. If they do it in the winter time when the cows are in, they'll have a quick walk through the shed. Oh yeah, that's all right. Right, paperwork, and they'll spend 2 hours on paperwork, looking at your paperwork. And at the moment, there is obviously massive emphasis on emissions and, you know, carbon footprint. Well, it's an interesting one, because the reason they want our data, and that's our data, that's our information, okay? We don't get paid for that data, but it belongs to us, and it has a value, because if there's any surplus within our emissions or our footprint, they will use that for their own gain. Well, they can say, oh yeah, you know, we've offset a little bit of our emissions by Mr. Evans here farming on his dairy farm, because he's got surplus, you know, he's got spare room. So, like I said, we don't get rewarded for that in any way, shape or form. But we are finding that farming is becoming more and more office-led, as opposed to doing what we should be doing, which is livestock, cropping, dealing with things out in the yard. That's what farming is. Farming isn't pushing a pen around a bloody desk, you know, trying to sort out our nutrient management plan. Yes, it needs doing. I totally agree. You know, it isn't about formulating our carbon footprint. Farming is about growing and rearing food. So that's why you're seeing a lot of people leave the industry, is for that reason, because they've just decided, you know what, this is enough. You know, enough is enough. You know, and my grandfather said many times, he passed away in 2008, and in 2007, we bought a small block of land, and we were over here one day talking about it, and we were talking about fencing it, and we need to put a ditch and drain some water out, and if we put a gateway there, etc., etc. And he said to me over here when we were having a cup of tea and a sandwich one day, and he just said to me, he said, there'll never be as many changes in your lifetime as there has been in mine. Well, if he was still around now and could see what's gone on now, he'd be bloody cringing, because his sort of farming career went from using the horse to plough a field to £30,000 tractor doing it with air conditioning. It's those type of changes, and but it's just insane, and that's another thing. It's just the economic pressure along with paperwork. Dear God in heaven, it's you can see why people are leaving, and there is a direct threat to food security. And as a nation, we are only just over 50% self-sufficient. So the whole, and I'll just put this in now, I am not anti-net zero or any of this. I accept totally we have a responsibility within this to do better. Okay, we're not the number one problem by any stretch. There has been some outstanding work done by the fossil fuel companies over the last few years to sort of deflect blame. They've got a much bigger budget than agriculture has.
It's kind of ironic, really, how farming gets blamed for, if you go back to vegetable oils and sugar and blaming fat, right? And ultimately meat industry and, dairy industry, and how we still have low fat dairy. I'm like, there's not a lot of fat in dairy anyway. And yet that message still persists decades on after it's been debunked, that it's nonsense, that the best milk is whole milk. If you want to drink milk, drink whole milk. That's, all of this stuff. And it was all marketing budget by other industries trying to make their stuff look better. And here we are again. And now it's, this, like, the fact that cows are being blamed for climate change in some circles is like, what are we talking about here? Like, they've tried the carbon cycle. That didn't work. They've now gone on to methane. Cool.
It's just what's going to be next? What are they going to try and hammer us with next? And it's never ending. And we're in an age of social media now, and it's just balmy, some of the stuff you're seeing being put out there. Absolutely balmy. And where is it going to end? Other than very, very, very short food supply or tight food supply chain, more pressure on imports. But it's like this. They want us to reduce carbon footprint. That's their focus all the time, reducing carbon footprint. But by reducing our carbon footprint here, we export our responsibilities, because if they're going to sort of shut us down on producing food for the UK, well, it's got to come from somewhere. There's a growing population. The food's got to come from somewhere. So it's going to be imported. Well, that's obviously carbon free. Must be. Emissions free. Must be the whole time. Yeah. So,
Corner flying over.
Baby, that was just one of the fishermen that was just popping in, just to,
that's all right.
Let me know there was a suspicious bird flying over.
Looking for fish, presumably.
Looking for fish, yeah. So it's like I said, you have to try and it takes some doing, trying to get your head around it. Like I said, I accept there are things that have to be done within in the UK, but it's a bit like spinning it round. This massive push, plant-based diet. Dear God in heaven, some of the science that's been pushed forward about that, well, it's a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace. And it's far better for the environment. Is it? Hell, it's like if they talk about carbon, so they want more cropping, more monoculture agriculture, which releases more carbon. You know, a cow
and
will
kills
go-
more wildlife, right? That this
Yeah. Yeah.
this idea that is somehow better is just, it's almost unfathomable to me. I'm like, it doesn't make sense.
Come the summer, or the spring now, you know, next month, end of March, our cows will go out. She will go out. She will harvest her own food. She'll spread her own shit while she's out there. She'll walk back to the milking parlour, be milked. You know, butter, liquid milk, yogurt, cheese. The amount of products that come off the back of the cow is incredible. And then at the end of her life, she will go into the food chain and she'll put a bloody seat in a car, cover a seat in a car. She'll make a pair of shoes. It's just, right, we take all of that away. What are we going to replace it with? It'll be all synthetics. And where do the synthetics come from? Fossil fuel industry. So just, wow.
What are you guys going to do on your farm over the next, like, where do you see yourselves over the next few decades? I mean, I know you're talking to me now from the part of your farm where you've dug a lake, which we'll talk about in a minute. We'll like go into that. So there's a level of diversification, albeit that was almost from what sounds like slightly accidental, because it was you have a passion for fishing. Where do you see yourself and your dairy cows and your, you know, that part of the farm over the next couple of decades?
It's an interesting one, because currently we are a family business, labour-wise, family unit, apart from one full-time employee. But staff is a major issue within agriculture. Okay, prior to COVID, there was an abundance of Eastern European labour, particularly over this way, because, you know, we've got a lot of large-scale vegetable growers over here as well. You know, and virtually every dairy farm you walked on, there'd be one or two Eastern Europeans. You know, the veg side of things, it was 90% Europeans working on farm, but staff is a massive issue. So from a dairy perspective, you are actually seeing more robotics come on farm, in terms of how the cows are milked, etc., because staff is a massive issue. But they are extremely expensive.
My uncle works for Delaval, and it's the machines are amazing, but geez, awesome. Do they cost, right? Like,
yeah, 100 grand a piece. And for us and our farm, I'd need 10. So there's £1 million straight out the door. That's £1 million investment in robots, and I'd probably only drop one staff member. You know what I mean? One labour unit.
Yeah. And then you've still got to maintain the machinery, and
you've got to maintain it, but also that you are going to invest £1 million into an industry which maybe 1 in 5 will make a healthy profit. It's nonsensical. Like I said, this is food. You know, there's our farm. I think there's going to be some fundamental changes to how it is, and I think UK agriculture actually needs a bit of protection under the fair trades banner, if you like, because we've got fair trade for everything else, you know, that comes from overseas, coffee, you know, chocolates, etc., you know, fruit. Why aren't we protecting our own industry through fair trade? That needs to be looked at. That really, really needs to be looked at.
If you all got together tomorrow and said, we're not selling our milk for less than 55 pence a litre, where do the supermarkets go? Do they just go, all right, sod you then, we'll go and buy it from somewhere abroad?
Yeah, they probably would. They probably would.
So
but
you're not protected in any way in that sense either.
Oh, we've got no protection.
Yeah.
We've got no protection whatsoever. And that's the insane part about it. But the only flip side of that is things are tightening up abroad, because obviously, you know, you've seen it in Holland now, with reductions of livestock numbers again for environmental reasons. Germany, something similar there. Ireland, you know, they're up against the same thing. So availability isn't actually going to be there. So potentially, maybe in a decade's time, the power might actually switch around to the farmer, But it's again, I'll come back to again. It's not about excuse me. It's not about being money grabbing. Excuse me, sorry.
Well, I don't think earning a living can be ever classed as money grabbing. I think that's the biggest problem with all of these conversations, is that making money gets labelled as money grabbing, whereas actually, why are we not allowed to pay our bills and make money for the work we do? You know, most other industries are.
Exactly that. But my concern is all the time is that the supermarkets have this expectation of margin all the time. And my fear is that they will just sit around and say, right, here, Mr. Farmer, you can have another 5 pence a litre for your milk. But then they'll go and put it up 5p to the consumer. And no offence, we're already in a cost of living crisis. Food inflation is creeping up, and I'm expecting it to creep up even higher this year for various reasons. Well, that would paint us in a very bad light. But it's the consumer, again, trying to protect the margin. Well, we can only protect it so far. It's like you asked, earlier on, how do you see your farming business over the next sort of decade, 2 decades? Well, the next 12 months is going to be pretty critical to that, because, there's only so much tightening of the belt we can physically do. There's only so low you can take costs. Your operational costs are what they are effectively. So I think the next 12 months, there is going to be some fundamental change to how agriculture functions. But in terms of the pricing mechanisms are going to be the most important part of all. Because and then obviously you've got the environmental obligations. Well, it's been widely said you can't farm green when your account is in the red. There is a trade-off here, and government and retailers haven't accepted not the responsibility. Yes, I suppose, yes, responsibility, but accepted what actually needs to happen. And part, they've got this big thing about they hate intensified agriculture, etc., etc. Well, you have to look at why it's become intensive. It's because the margin has been so poor. Do you think I want to milk 480 cows? Do I, Alice? No. I'd love to milk 140 cows and sustain 3 families. It'd be fantastic, beautiful way of life. And enough money to be able to take a bloody holiday once a year if I wanted to. So that's the issue. They have to understand the last decade, 2 decades, before they can sort of project what they want us to do over the next decade, 2 decades. The economics of agriculture are carnage, absolute carnage.
And what if you look to start selling direct to consumer and cut out some of the middlemen? And I'm aware of what I'm saying there, of what it takes to do that on an infrastructure level. Like, that's not an easy thing to do. So I'm not asking that question thinking, just sell direct to consumer, it'd be easy. That's like, the middlemen do serve they serve a purpose, right? They all take their cuts, and it's killing the whole chain. And they do, there's a lot of stuff goes on, because presumably is your milk collected in tankers and then off it goes? You're paid a per litre price, and that's as far as you have to deal with it.
Infrastructure isn't the restricting factor.
What is it?
The fact that a tanker comes to us, collects 20 to 25,000 litres of milk at a time.
Yeah.
I can't physically sell doorstep deliveries 20 to 25,000 litres of milk. It's like a good friend of mine said to me the other day, someone asked him, you need to go direct to market. Yeah. Well, how does he sell 12 million eggs a year? This is what I talk about. The retailer has manipulated consumer buying, but has also manipulated producer operations.
Mm.
So through a tight margin, so we've all had to intensify. We've got nowhere to go. We've got nowhere to go. During COVID in particular, there was a large number of dairy farms set up little vending machines, selling 400 or 500 litres of milk a day, pint bottles, milkshakes. It did really well. But now you are seeing, and selling it for £1 a litre, which fantastic. You're seeing now farms taking those vending machines out because the customer base has gone
back to the supermarket.
Sentiment only lasts so long, or goodwill only lasts so long. It was almost like a bit of a novelty, and that's the issue. So there's going to be massive change. I think the next 12 months in particular are going to be pretty critical to how this, we're in election year as well. So politicians at the minute are promising the earth, but as usual will deliver sweet FA, other than protect themselves and feather their own nest sort of thing. But at the moment it all sounds fantastic what they're going to do for agriculture, but it's around the way the subsidies are going to work. And I've had it leveled at me several times, subsidies, bloody hell, we're giving you money for nothing. Well, no. You have to understand, they haven't subsidized us. They've subsidized the consumer and kept food artificially cheap. So George Monbiot was one who had a crack at me about 12 months ago about subsidies. And I just said to him, look, I said, if you want food prices to go to their natural levels, I said, I'm game. I said, but don't come moaning to me. Don't come moaning to me. And he kind of went back in his box then, but that was on Twitter. A healthy Twitter debate, that was.
Is there such a thing?
No,
that's Twitter.
That's as bloody toxic as everywhere else. But there is a lot of things leveled at agriculture which are unfair and grossly misunderstood and grossly misplaced. And a lot of it is around subsidies. And like I said, subsidies are there to keep food artificially cheap. And you are seeing reductions in support payments now over the next couple of years. And unless we sign up to this super duper scheme that Welsh government are putting in place that wants us to take 20% of land out of production, well, what on earth is that going to do to food security?
What's the deal with that? I was watching, I can't remember the farmer's name, but I was watching a farmer because he was drawing it out on he's like, here's my 100-acre farm, and first it was 10%.
Oh, that's my mate Johan. That is, he's
cool. Johan, there we go. And now I'm taking, and now they want 20%, and he was kind of going, what am I supposed to do with that? So are there also restrictions? So where I went with that was, well, then, so what? Because I'm always interested in why people are doing things, right? So I'm like, what is the government actually trying to achieve here? Is it so? And I'm in the property industry, right? So we get hammered on another scale, and we're as hated as, probably, I don't know, we're scum of the earth, landlords. I mean, we're just making money off the backs of people, all of that world, right? So I have some insight into what that feels like. But I'm like, is there something that they're trying to do that they're not articulating? Like, do they want regenerative agriculture? And because I said to Owen when I'd watched this video, I went, so could they put pigs and chickens and start doing different stuff in the woods? Or are they like not allowed? Are the woods like they're woods and you can't touch them and you're not allowed to do anything? Like, what are they trying to achieve? Is there any sort of information behind it of, we'd like you to do this and this is how we see your finances then growing or panning out, or even an acknowledgement that we're going to take 20% of your land and make your business even worse than it was before? Like, what do they actually say about the business side of it?
They're trying to keep everybody happy, but they're going to achieve none of it.
None of that.
Particularly in Wales, right? The SFI scheme in England is a far better scheme than what we've got in Wales, because in Wales they are basically blackmailing us. If you want a subsidy, you have to give up 20% of your land.
Yeah.
And if it's an opt-in or out scheme, okay? But if you don't sign up to the scheme, you don't get nothing anyway. So why would I sacrifice 20% of our productive land? So take it out of production, take it out of potentially producing a profit to go and plant trees and habitat. Now, again, I'm not against wildlife, and certainly not. But this is a complete brain fart of a scheme, because they want to de-intensify agriculture. They want you to take 20% out as well. Yet we've got a population that's growing at a rate of bloody knots. So where on earth is the food going to come from? So you're going to see food inflation go even higher, because the demand will be high, production will be low, and you're going to have these issues overseas as well around supply, because it just physically isn't going to be there. But no, with regards to Welsh government, I don't think they know what they really want. It's just no joined up thinking whatsoever. And tomorrow, Wednesday, in Cardiff, there is a protest by farmers. I'm going there myself. Potentially 20 to 30,000 people are going to be there about this scheme, because it's absolute lunacy. But what else has gone on is that they've had expert advice around it, but they've gone against it. There's nitrate vulnerable zones. NRW, National Resources Wales, the government body for waterways and water protection, recommended 8% of Wales become a nitrate vulnerable zone. So you can't spread any manure at certain times of the year or fertilizers, etc. Fine, no issue, understand it. No, Welsh government said we'll make the whole country an NBZ. So they went against their own government. The people
that they've no doubt spent a lot of money on having that report created,
getting all of this report done. So then you've got that. There's the mishandling of TB. It's cost the taxpayer and us, the farmer, millions and millions and millions. Then you've got this SFS scheme that's going to be brought in that is just going to absolutely penalise the people in society that need food the most. Christ, we've already got people living out of food banks in Wales, phenomenal numbers. And they're going to make food even more expensive through some half-assed, harebrained scheme, which I get the distinct impression our rural affairs minister actually doesn't believe in it. I am no body language expert, but she looked so bloody uncomfortable presenting this. And yet her fearless leader, my way or the highway. And as I said, we're in election year. Conservatives, Jesus Christ, the whole COVID, everything that's gone on there. I mean, Christ, the helping mates out around contracts, around PP, things like that. It's as shady as it gets. So there's no hope of them coming in. So it looks like we're going to be stuck with Labour again. And I'm not saying Conservatives would be any better. But it's Labour are going to get in again, and we're going to be stuck with this scheme. And if they don't get us this way, they're going to get us another way. And that's what tomorrow's protest is about. Is like enough is enough. It's absolutely enough. And it's, yes, we suffer in the short term, but in the long term, it's you guys, the consumer, that's going to get absolutely smashed. Yeah.
Which is, it's the same that's happened in the property market with the way rents have gone through the roof. And it's all the legislation and tax change and everything that have been brought in supposedly to help tenants, which has created supply and demand issues, which means rents have gone up. And yes, I'm sure someone will listen to this and go, no, it's your fault, you're an evil landlord, whatever. There's a market, and as long as the government try and manipulate a market, you can't. Like, a market is a market for a reason.
Exactly.
It's the same thing, and it's the people who can least afford it that end up getting affected, because no market stomachs something for so long. That's why landlords have left the market, because they've gone, can't make it work anymore, so I'll leave. So now there's less housing. So now there's a problem because there aren't enough rental. It's the same thing.
And just coming around to housing as well, you only have to look at what's going on in around Cambridgeshire, Oxfordshire, etc., around bloody grade 1 highly productive land being taken out of production to grow houses, to build houses on. And I know there is a demand for housing, but there's so much brownfield sites around the place. Why the hell aren't they building? And again, with solar, new developments going on. Why isn't more solar being put on new properties?
Every commercial building
Commercial building.
in the UK.
It
For a
doesn't
start.
it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. The mind boggles. It's like I said, who is the brains of the operation behind some of these decisions within government, but also in devolved governments, but also in and around planning as well, because every action is a reaction. So the action of taking 40 acres out of food production and whacking up 20 houses the acre for affordable housing, yes, need the housing, but that's 40 acres of land gone
Forever.
straight away, gone forever. The moment there's steel and concrete on it, that's it. That ain't going to produce food again. And it's much like what's happening with these schemes with the woodland, because it's you go out and plant trees today. Realistically, they're talking about it for carbon drawdown. Well, pasture grass is a better carbon sink than trees. So plant the tree today. Realistically, before that reaches maximum drawdown, it's minimum 20 years. Then, oh hell, this isn't quite working so well. So the trees have been in. They go and remove them because it isn't quite going to plan. So it's another 4 or 5 years after that. It's just gone out of production for the quarter of a century. And you're seeing these things around vertical farms, trying to grow vegetables vertically. Dyson's involved in that. Yeah, great, wonderful, but it's not going to. It's not going to do it, and I've got grave concerns about centralized food production. I don't like it because ultimately it's going to be
the shit out of me.
Yeah, it's going to be owned and run by a PLC. Again, shareholders, venture capitalists. You know the script. I mean, it makes me very, very nervous. That does. Very nervous. Because farmers generally, we're honest, straight up people. We're loyal, stoic characters. Are the Gates of the world as loyal and
I don't think so. There's something about that guy that just makes me think he likes money more than he cares about people. I just can't imagine why I've got those thoughts.
Yeah, it's the whole
allowing our food production to be in the hands of big corporate is, I mean, it's happening already. Our population is sick, and that's not because of the farmers. That's because of what's getting done to the food or non-food on the way to the consumer.
UPFs.
Farmers don't make people sick.
Yeah, no, ultra processed foods. I mean, I had a period of ill health a couple of years ago. I got misdiagnosed with cancer. To be honest, the NHS were absolutely magnificent. Okay.
Yeah.
But I got misdiagnosed with cancer. Went through radiotherapy. I reacted quite badly. I lost my toenails. I lost my teeth. I've got false teeth, but I very rarely wear them. But I'm one of the lucky ones. I came out the other side.
Yeah.
And it was interesting having there's one thing there's a couple of things that really frustrate me within. I know we're going off topic here slightly, but really
that's what this podcast is for. You've got 3 hours to go wherever you need to go. Carry on.
Well, it frustrates me around the health service, things like that. There's one in particular. The air ambulance should be funded, not through charity. It should be government funded. But why on earth are cancer charities, i.e. Macmillan, who were very, very good to me, why are they having to fundraise? They should be funded again. And it was interesting having a chat to the Macmillan girls at the time, and they are seeing more and more and more and more cancers. And I said, is it
younger and younger and younger people?
Yeah. And I said, is it
like yourself, right? It's like, it's just,
is it because it's been picked up better? And they were there. Well, yeah, that is part of it, but we are seeing more and more. Yeah, people eating more and more crap because they're picking or noticing a lot more stomach and bowel disorders and cancers and things like that in younger people. And like I said, people are eating more and more rubbish because they've got less and less time. and they would like to see more emphasis placed on eating real foods, low processed foods, literally out the ground into a saucepan, cooked, eaten. The decent red meat, white meat, just balanced, healthy food rather than pure shite, pre-cooked in a packet in a supermarket. But they understand too that, again, like I said earlier, around retailer driving what consumers buy. Convenience foods, like, they're diabolical, absolutely diabolical, but they're high value added or high profit areas for retailers. So they were there.
And scary well, just on the, it's not even like convenience foods. Like, we've devastated what bread is. It's not even, my husband was at our children's school last week talking to them about the food, because we're like, there's ingredients that you're feeding our children that aren't ingredients. If it can't be done in a cookbook or in a home kitchen, I don't want it in the kids' food.
Nope.
And it's so pervasive now. There's a big difference between organic sourdough and white sliced processed bread. So we can't even have the conversation about bread or even milk. Like, what you produce from your cow, what your cows produce and you send off. How that ends up in the supermarkets often, when it's dried and powdered, or when it's skimmed, or all of these like things that they're called milk, but they're so far away from the cow, they're no longer milk, and yet they're labeled milk. And it's like, we can't even just go, oh well, that thing there, that's obviously an ultra processed food, because it's like, we've ultra processed milk and bread. So unless we have the conversation of, well, what's on the ingredients list, can I find that in my home kitchen?
I think, again, it's how things have evolved, and it's everybody's become a slave to money, and that's only going to continue. But it's affected our sort of dietary choices, and again, as I said earlier, it's everybody's in a hurry. Everybody's in a hurry. Nobody's got any time to cook. It's friends of mine. What makes it worse is that they're both those, the husband and wife, and they're both from farming families. I don't even know why they've got a cooker in their kitchen. It never gets used. Microwave, Christ, they'll wear one of them out in 3 months. It's they've got no time. On a weekend, give them a shout. Oh, you fancy going out? Whatever. And they're just dozing in a chair all weekend. They're just basically a vegetable for the weekend. Exhausted, knackered, ruined. So you not just around sort of foods, but work-wise as well. The burnout is incredible, and it's not helped by eating shitty foods. But they haven't got time, apparently. Well, I suppose they haven't. If you like, farmers, we're lucky in that respect. We'll always make time, traditional 3 meals a day. Christ, that's how it is. Roast on a Sunday, and I count myself lucky for that too. But it's, again, just coming back to the Macmillan girls, in the hospital. They were magnificent, but they are fighting fires. But they see it. They see it. They know what's going on, and and as I said, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse, because people are eating crap, and and this is not trying to put farmers, myself included, up on some kind of pedestal, but without us, you will end up eating more shit, more crap, rubbish, and real food, bloody hell, simple, real foods. Yes, you might end up paying a little bit more for it. So I love the farmers market. I think they're awesome. We've got them in our town. It's on a Friday. I love popping in there and just going in there. Yeah, fine. I might end up paying £1 more for a pack of pork chops, but so be it, because I know it's literally been reared on Gary's farm. It'll be in the abattoir 3 miles down the road from him. It'll be put back at his place. He packs it. It's there in front of me with no water and Christ knows what added to it. you know, and it's the same. There's the guys, the local turkey guys, they're selling, you know, turkey breasts, etc., crowns all year round. We've got an awesome longhorn beef guy, Rob. He sells his longhorn beef down there, hangs it 28 days, beautiful marbling. Will not find anything better. Yeah, fine, it's £1 a kilo more. But it's awesome. It's a short supply chain. It's keeping money local.
It's gone to him, right? Not
It's
all of the bits and pieces, and God knows what's happened in the middle, and you know, the rest of it.
It's gone to him, and there's no fat being added to the packet. Whereas you buy a bloody joint of beef from Tesco, and it's like, yeah, fine, there's a little layer of natural fat, and then they've slapped the great big piece on in with it. It's like, what the hell is this all about?
Yeah.
You know, there's the Carla then who churns the butter. It's the most golden yellow butter. It's got the lumps of salt in it. You have it, you taste it. It's just like, wow.
Magic.
It's awesome. Instead of this shit that they're knocking out in supermarkets. But the supermarkets have a function both for consumer and us, because of the way we've been pushed, because of the economics. Oh, well, these days, milking cows, you know, to make any sort of viable business, you've got to have 180, 200 cows minimum. Yeah, hell is herds down here with nearly 3,000 cows. Well, that's a flipping factory. I nearly swore. I nearly went. But that's a flipping factory. You know, there'd be 30 people on shift work there. You know, it's just absolute lunacy.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, when the milk price is good, he will make a fortune. When it's bad like it is now, he is losing. Oh, I hate to think.
Hand over fist.
I couldn't sleep at night.
Well, and there's a whole world as well then of, you know, what is a farm that size. You know, if we want to talk about the countryside, then that's a massive monocrop, right?
Yeah.
It happens to be cattle, but it's still a monocrop.
Of course,
you know, with everything that they've got to deal with on their farm, for, you know, not being able to like sustain that in that specific environment, really.
Yeah, no, totally. And
so it just forces everything. Like the bigger farming is forced into, the more unsustainable it actually becomes for the environment in which it's in.
Yeah.
Because it can't, like, the land can't cope with too much of any one thing. And that's not making him wrong. Like, that's the way that we are as a consumer. If we're going to really own it, we as a consumer are pushing that by our demand for cheap milk or cheap food, or not wanting to look where it's coming from, or not wanting to deal with it. And, you know, you said earlier on in the podcast about, you know, you don't want to like come across bad. I think consumers need to start owning some responsibility for what's happening, because I don't blame the farmers. Like, you guys are trying to survive and you're trying to do what's being asked of you. So at some point, every individual, like every person listening to this, every person who eats food has to take some responsibility that the choice that we make when we go shopping has an impact.
And the irony
and that's
is,
not the farmer's fault.
No,
like,
it's
that's
not.
us. Because if we spend our money differently, those farms won't have to do that.
Yeah, it's the relationship. Basically, a supermarket is a facilitator of the relationship between farmer and consumer. Yeah. That's what they are, and they charge a shitload of money for it. That's what they do. But ironically, the budget supermarkets are the best and fairest with the farmer. So your Aldi's and your Lidl's, they're awesome to deal with. They are awesome. And yet, how many people go to them because they're classed as budget? You know, I love them. You know, you go into our local Aldi, I can guarantee you all their veg will have been sourced within 20 miles of the store. Their own brand cheese, cheddars, mature cheddars, that'll be our milk that's gone into the cheese factory 5 miles down the road from us, packed, you know, straight into store. Their liquid milk will have come from the place in Cardiff, but that's West Wales milk again, goes to Cardiff, pasteurized, bottled and back down. So they are the better ones. And in the larger scale retailers, Morrison's are one of the best too. There's two others, one in particular. who is horrendous, but it's widely accepted across every single industry. They are the worst
Do we
retailer.
get to know their name?
Begins with T and ends with Co. They are diabolical.
Yeah.
Absolutely diabolical, to the point where when it comes to negotiating contracts with, not with farmers, but with our milk buyer is First Milk. So they do all the contract negotiations with the retailers and sort all of that out.
Yeah.
But they've had it before now where that retailer in particular wanted to send three people down to meet them for contract negotiation, but wanted 15 grand a person to sit down at the table before even it's like, who the bloody hell do you think you are? So they were swiftly told to go forth and multiply. And about 10 days later, they were back in front. Yeah, we'll send the three people down. Don't worry about the charge. It's like, they wanted 45 grand just to sit at the table.
To show up at the negotiating table. The irony.
Bloody hell. And that's widely known now. And that's the type of organisation you're dealing with. It's like they think they are top of the tree. Well, they're awful. They're awful people. And ultimately, that 45 grand, that's been made off the back of the bloody farmer to start with. So it's a disgrace, you know, when somebody tries to do that. But yeah, no. Honestly, if you can't get to a farmer's market or a farm shop, the budget retailers are the best.
That's really interesting.
By a mile. In terms of your perishables, i.e. your staples, you know, veg, milk, cheese, things like that. I know that they bring a lot of overseas meats and what have you, or Western European meats, you know, sort of German, etc., which is fine. But in terms of your fresh veg and dairy products, yeah, it's all local. They're great.
And I'm sure they've got stuff in there that's local as well, right? So they do bring in the meat, but then they'll
which a lot of people realise, you know, that they are good. And in also their terms, when they pay our milk buyer, their terms are shorter, whereas Tico are 90-day terms.
Using you guys as the bank, basically, which is what that's doing, right? On commercial terms, they're using you as a bank.
Correct. No good.
Wow. You mentioned earlier about you mentioned something about an Asia market, but we didn't. I noted it to like go. I want to go back to that.
Oh,
so
yeah,
we didn't.
sorry.
So talk to me about that and what that has as an impact on us and how all of that works. And
you've got basically commodities of trade. Milk is a commodity. So you've got the global dairy trade. So you will have your cheddars, your butters, your skim milk, your whey, etc. will all be traded on the international commodity market, which is then governed by the global dairy trade auction, which takes place every 2 weeks. So Asia traditionally has been a massive part of that, because as their taste
producing or buying or both?
Buying,
because I've seen some enormous dairy videos of Chinese dairy farms.
There are, but what again?
So they're buying.
They're buying on that global dairy trade auction.
Okay. Which is pushing the price up.
Yeah, it's crept up. It has crept up a little bit, but bear in mind that's after 12 months of absolute collapse. So it crept up the other day, 5.5%-6% on the auction. Great, wonderful. It needs to go up another 15% for it to really translate into anything tangible on our milk price. So, but yeah, China in particular are heavy hitters within the global dairy trade because, again, as their taste and their ability to digest milk, don't forget, because historically they struggled. So they have changed their dietary requirements, so they have stepped in. But also there are large-scale dairy farms in China, but they lack the skill set. They lack the skill set. They're not the best stock people. You know, they've employed European and Americans to come in and sort of help set this up. But fundamentally, the people on the ground are a bit shit at animal husbandry.
Yeah, they're not always great with people over there. So there's a whole world of like animals are going to get it as well.
Yeah,
like
true, exactly.
Completely different culture.
Yeah, that's all I was talking about with regards to the Asian markets is the global dairy trade auction. But most of their supply comes from New Zealand and part of Australia, but New Zealand particularly, because Kiwis, a high percentage of the Kiwis milk is turned into powder
and then sent to China. I was just about to say, how does this work for transport? Milk's a relatively perishable product.
Yeah, all shipped out. Fortunate to go out to New Zealand back in 2012, and there was a massive drying plant being built in Darfield down in Canterbury. And effectively, that was I can't remember how many million tons that was going to push out a year, but it was a phenomenal number. But again, that was all targeted in the Asian market. So when they saw all these large scale dairy units going up in China, they probably shit themselves and thought, oh hell, well, there's our market gone. But again, it's the animal husbandry skills aren't the best.
So what do they end up doing? But are they then shutting down, or what are they dealing with if their animal husbandry is not good? I mean, obviously that comes down into affect the milk, but presumably they're still producing and still selling. But are they just not getting the yields that they were expecting, or what does that actually translate to?
Yeah, yields, but also livestock fallout rate. So the culling rate of livestock is astronomical because they're just no good at keeping cows. They just don't understand how So in terms of milk volumes, they're not that great. They're not that great. But ultimately, economics are what stops it. And Chinese people are pretty bloody ruthless around economics. Holy hell!
Yeah. Well, it's why they're doing so well now. You said earlier about, I can't remember exactly how you said it, but you were talking about how everything's measured by money. We've become slaves to money, I think is how you said it, and that's exactly it. That's what we're dealing with on a worldwide scale, in every industry. Everything's measured by money. It doesn't matter whether you're a farmer or a parent or any kind of worker. Our value has been reduced down to a monetary amount.
It's the metric that everybody is measured by.
Yeah. And it's devastating. It's devastating every industry. It's devastating. I would say it's devastating parenting. I've got a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. Yeah. And it played out even for me. And technically, I don't have to work. I love doing this, and I love helping people with their money, so I do it. I don't have to. My husband works for search and rescue, so he's got a good job. All of that. Yeah. And I still dealt with a lack of value as a mother because it's been so devalued. It's like, well, outsource your childcare, send your children to a childminder, put them in nursery. Yeah. It's like this whole, on every level, whether you're a farmer or a mother or any kind of worker, all of our lives have been reduced to, well, what's the pound per hour value? Yeah. And farming, it's like you said, if you were in Dragon's Den, they'd go, no, thanks. You want me to put £1 million worth of dairy equipment in when you're already losing money, and that's not actually going to save you any money. Why would I do that? But that's the true cost. I believe now we're starting to feel the true cost of devaluing everything down to finance. Yeah, agreed. If we don't value what farmers do as any other metric than money, it's a dead end game. Same with parenting, same with any industry, same with why people are in jobs for minimum wage and they hate their lives because that's all their value is now. It's why we don't value cooking food. There's no return on it. I could be out working instead of cooking my food, so I'll go and buy a microwave meal. Yeah. And it's like, it's having a devastating impact. I don't know what the answer is. I'm just noticing that everybody I speak to, that's what comes up. It's like this idea that money's going to sort of solve the problems, and yet it doesn't. It's an unintended consequence of just quantifying everything down to pounds or dollars or yen or whatever. Yeah, they're all saying money doesn't bring happiness, but it can bring a more pleasant form of misery. There's a bit of truth in that, but it's like you said, from our point of view, from a farming perspective,
there is, I'm going to use the F word. There is.
I think we've done well as an ex-chef and a farmer to have not really sworn. And we're an hour and a half in. I think we've done really well.
I've been sweating here. I've just got a couple of lads just come in the shop now, and but there is fuck all left behind. That's the thing.
Yeah, there's nothing.
And yet, people are going to walk into Tesco every day to get their groceries, but it's going to come to a point where there is going to be less and less and less availability, and I do worry where it's going to end up, because not for my, because it's easy for me, because I could just pull the pin tomorrow, sell up, crowds of the money, pay my capital gains, go off into the sunset. It's easy and live relatively guilt free. But as a population, there's a lot of farmers already doing it, and there is going to be more. And I do worry about the long-term food security. But just coming back to the money aspect of it, it is the metric by which we're measured. It's like it's like my bank manager when we have our annual review. I can't say to you, I did really well this year. I sold 4 million litres of milk. That means nothing to her. Right. How much profit do you make? That's what matters.
That's all she cares about.
Yeah. And it's not her fault. That's the way her role is. And she's good. And she's from a farming background. She understands the economics and the structures around agricultural finance and what have you.
Yeah.
About it being asset rich, cash poor, it's just, that's how agriculture is as an enterprise. And hence why you see multi-generational farms, particularly in Wales. Just coming back to New Zealand, you go out there, a farm on average changes hands every 6 years. There's no sentimental value to land over there whatsoever. It's just how they are. It's just land or farm is a stepping stone to the next size up, the bigger, whereas here you have, it's like our situation, as I said, fourth generation, fifth following on, all the way, every 10 years there's been a major investment on farm, whether it be a building or a milking parlour or a new piece of machinery. That's how it's been. And it's increasing again because of sentimental value. Home is home is home. That's how it's been, is increasing the size of the operation at home. That's how it is. Whereas if you looked at it from a business perspective, oh well, Christ, we should have sold it 30 years ago, moved to a bigger farm, and then we should have sold that this year to go to a bigger farm. But again, sentiment does evil things to people.
Well, or the opposite. I mean, it's probably the one thread connecting you back to everything else that isn't money. Actually, it occurs as a detriment because it has a financial detriment, but actually that sentimentality is probably one of the last threads of, like,
it spurs you on. It does.
Keeps you going. Yeah.
It's like,
right.
When
Keeps
you're
on the land, keeps you doing it, keeps you. Yeah.
It's like when you had Gareth Wynn on the show a few weeks back. Gareth's been on his farm 375, 376 years, whatever. That's cultural. That's massive culture there. Yeah. And it's why you're seeing the kickoff now about us trying to sort of protect our livelihoods, is because it's the culture. It's the culture, the makeup of it. It's but interesting times ahead. Interesting times.
If you could wave a magic wand, what would you put in place that would have your farm and other farms like yours become financially stable, be able to, supply at the price you want to? I mean, possibly even get smaller, right? Because actually, if you start making money on 140 cows, you don't need 480 cows.
No, exactly.
What needs to happen?
Yeah, well, it's like
you just put anything in place.
Yeah, it's like I said to you earlier, when grandparents are farming and their whole farming career, the price never went down, but they were protected by the marketing board, the milk marketing board.
So what happened there? So you said
Oh,
up until what, 1990?
yeah, 94, I think
What
it was.
happened?
It was disbanded because it was deemed too powerful. And basically the power shifted from the milk marketing board or from the farmer to the retailer, which is the worst of the worst. But you don't get situations where the likes of Toyota, Toyota deals with a garage, and a garage says to Toyota, well, I'm going to pay you this much for your Toyota Yaris, buying it in as stock. It doesn't happen like that. Toyota sets a price. It's a price setter scenario. We, agriculture, farmers, food producers, are price takers, always have been, and it's fundamentally wrong. So the magic wand, I would set up the boards which there is a base value, okay, on the product, and that base value.
We've lost him at the bit of gold. Bear with us, everybody. He'll be back in a moment. Just as we were getting the magic wand scenario. Steve, are you there? Something like Gareth's podcast. There's something going wrong on the farm. Just hang in there, folks. If I remember rightly, Gareth didn't make one podcast because the pigs had got out, and another one, a fence had gone wrong. He's back.
I'm back. Yeah, sorry.
You got cut off at the bit of gold about the magic wand. Okay,
Yeah,
go
sorry.
for
Yeah,
it.
the magic wand. If I had the magic wand, that basically I would set up a marketing board where there'd be a sort of cost of production plus model, and that's what it was, inflation tracked. Because ironically, if it was inflation tracked, it would actually keep food inflation down.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't get the volatility, you wouldn't get the huge highs in production, and then the massive drops. So that would be my magic wand moment. Would be, and also I would look to try and ring fence some of the money in terms of support mechanisms around it. So that's if it's farming. It's a business, okay. Let's not kid ourselves here. We're in business.
Yeah.
And it has to make a profit.
Yeah. Agreed.
So if the support payments, subsidies, call them what you want, we're going to be removed, then it has to go to that cost of production plus model, or the support payments remain in place. It's got to be ring fenced. It's got to be protected. That pot of money has got to be protected. But the question I ask is, why is it government that are giving the support payments when it's the retailers that are making the massive amounts of money? It should be the retailers supporting the farmer if there's going to be any kind of support mechanism there. But this comes back to that fair trade again. There's a number of things there, but magic wand moment. Yeah, Christ, I would just simplify it and just have, right, there we are. It's protected through a cost of production plus model. That would be my go-to. And it's not about being greedy. It's just about being fair. Yeah,
agreed. What's the history of the subsidies, and why did they start, and why did the government start paying them? How old is that? I'm guessing it's decades, if not a century.
Post-war.
Yeah.
The nation was starving.
Yeah.
Right. Want to increase production. Want every acre, every bloody back garden. We need it to produce food. End of story.
Yeah. And they paid for that so that people were incentivized to do that.
Yeah, very much so. And there was a period where sort of the subsidies as we know them now were set up around area payments. So however many hectares, acres you owned and farmed, you were paid an area payment. There was a few that bent the bloody rules, and that is always the way. You'll always get them.
That's humans.
Fuck it all up for everybody else, as is the way. But in its most recent form, it's been based around headage payments, around livestock, sheep, cattle. We call them what they are. but there's been a major grievance like, oh, why are they supporting the livestock industry? They're destroying the environment through emissions, etc., etc. It's like, well, Christ's sake, every single aspect of agriculture is supported. It's how it is. But then, why is there 9 billion a year of subsidies for the aviation industry in the UK? Now, what's that doing to the environment? So, flying is a luxury. I'm not producing beluga caviar at my farm. I'm producing milk. It's a staple, not a luxury. So why shouldn't I be entitled to a little bit of a handout for keeping food artificially cheap?
Yeah. Do you know what the farming subsidies is on an annual basis? Do you know what that figure is? I don't. There's a genuine question. That's not. It's just interesting that, you know, when you put it like that about aviation is subsidized, you know, this stuff like that. I'm just like, what is it really? How does that work?
I don't know what the total is for agriculture. I can find out easily enough. I know in our own circumstance, on the turnover of business we get £8,000 a year. Yeah. It's hardly anything. Eight grand is 8 grand.
It's a drop. It's nothing, right?
But
in the big scheme of things. Yeah.
It doesn't even buy 2 tank loads of diesel.
Yeah.
You know, it's which we'd burn in a week. You know, so it's peanuts in the scheme of things. And I am quite resentful of when you get clowns that level it at you. That's, oh, you know, bloody, subsidies. I'm paying you, so I want to say in what your business does. Like, fuck off. You haven't got the slightest idea what you're talking about. Don't come to me with that. If I'm paying you subsidies, I want to walk into your yard and see where my tax money's going. Fine, come on in. I'll welcome you in and explain the basics to you, and you won't bother coming back again, because you will realise that you're being stupid in you know, in what you're trying or you think you're doing. So
it's very interesting actually from an education piece, you know, because the counter to marketing is marketing, but in an educational sense, right? So actually getting people to understand, okay, farmers are subsidized by this much. Did you know the aviation industry is subsidized by this? Did you know the NHS costs this? Did you know, yada yada yada. It's like everything's subsidized actually in the UK. I mean, people have no idea how good we've got it. But it's like, it's really getting people to get that and educating and having people understand it so that they've got some interest in it. And look, there's a whole world of everyone's so bloody busy. They're like, I just need to buy a pint of milk. I haven't got time for this. You know, I'll start going on about this stuff, and people are like, Alex, I just need to go to the supermarket and buy food. Like, I haven't got the headspace for this. And I understand that. And also I'm like, and that naivety and refusal to look is also going to really fucking hurt in 20 years time when the farmers are all got, you know, they're not all going to be gone, but they're gone beyond recognition because it was no longer sustainable to produce food like that. So now you're going to get whatever's given to you. Like there's you know, we can't, this ignorance is bliss. Like it's only bliss for so long, and then it really hurts.
Yeah, no, agreed. I'm not a conspiracy theorist or any of that crap, but it's like, you just seen some of the stuff that's going on, and it just seems to be like there is a certain amount of effort being put into destabilizing food supply. And I look at it and I just think some things don't add up. You know, why are these, what's this all about? You know, the distribution of wealth across the world, really, it's insane, absolutely insane. And you know, I consider myself to be well off because I got a roof over my head and I got food on the table. The farming income stream is a bit shite at the moment, but I consider myself to be pretty well off. Yeah, I'm whinging and moaning here because the job's on its ass, and it's
well, your whole industry's on the line. I think, you know, that's probably something worth talking about. Well, it's not like you're moaning. You're moaning because it's like there's a big problem here. That's
and it's yeah, there is a massive problem. It's like, I'm fine. I'm fighting for my livelihood as well. I'm my son's livelihood, but ultimately, I'm fighting for consumers' livelihood too,
Yeah.
because it's all on the line. It's all on the line, and like I said, I've said it a few times. You know, there is going to be fundamental change in the next 12 months, in particular, because obviously political instability. There's going to be political agendas in there as well. About the best way forward for agriculture, the best way forward for retail structures. Well, economics are the simplest part of all. They work or they don't, and if they don't work, there's going to be a massive threat to food security, and that's not scaremongering. That's the reality of it, because farmers, we are, as I said, we're stoic, you know, pretty robust emotionally, but there comes a tipping point where it's going to be, you know what, pull the pin, or in some cases the bank will pull the pin, and then it's game over. And as
then you're not even riding off in the sunset, right? When the bank pulls the pin, you're left with nothing.
You're
That's it. You're toast as well as the farm, and you know, there's no enjoying retirement on the capital you've created. That's it.
As long as the bank cover off whatever's owed on the land, that's all they care about. So there's going to be nothing left behind. But excuse me, as it is now, you know, you're seeing land coming onto the market, and it is being bought up, and it's going into forestry because they can offset the carbon. You know, it happened week before last. Engineering firm from England bought 1,200 acres up in mid Wales, purely to plant for carbon offset. So it's carbon laundering in its finest form.
Yeah,
because that engineering company can carry on with the same level of emissions, but it's okay. I bought 1,200 acre in mid Wales. It'd be fine.
Wow,
it's crazy. And incidentally, this is the crazy bit about it, is English engineering firm bought land in Wales, which was supported by Welsh government to the tune of about £1.5 million. A Scottish firm came in and planted it. So none of the wealth created by it is staying in Wales, and the carbon drawdown is actually
offset is
across the border. So it's just like, what the bloody hell? And you know, 4 people lost their jobs on that sale. There was 9 dwellings on. It's an old estate. 9 dwellings on the estate which were rented out. They've now been pulled. They don't want people living there. So it's just like, Jesus Christ. Yeah. So that's what's happening to land at the moment.
So going back to your magic wand moment of, you know, basically having a way of having cost of production plus model.
Yeah.
What is the barrier to having farmers get together and do that? Like, and I get there's a whole world of, there's a reality to you do that, there's going to be chaos, and you've got all kinds of, you know, create unintended consequences that are just horrific for the individual.
The biggest.
So I'm not disacknowledging those. And like, what are the barriers that stop? Is it time? Is it fear? Is it just the sheer organization of that is unbelievable because there's so many of you? Like, is it a legislation thing that you're just not allowed? Hence the milk marketing board, you know, ceasing to exist in the way that it used to.
The biggest issue with that is that everybody's cost of production is slightly different. Because we invested in new facilities back in 2018. We've got one loan left on that, which finishes this year. So our cost of production will drop because our financing costs will drop by 70,000. So our cost of production will alter. Well, there's a farm up the road from me. They put in new facilities now in the last year. So for the next 10 years, they or 5 to 10 years, I don't know the personal circumstances, 5 to 10 years. So their cost of production is going to be higher. So the cost of production is variable across the whole industry. But if there was an average taken, yes, you're going to piss some people off. But if there was an average taken with the inflation tracker, great, wonderful. But that would be the biggest restriction. I dare say the government would actually quite like it, from the respect of it'd probably shut us up for a bit. It would keep us a bit happier, but also it would get the retailers to toe the line a little bit more, because they're pretty unscrupulous. And do you know what I really want to do? Is I really want Mr. Tesco man to take me to one of these fake farms that they've got and see how wonderful.
Oh, don't get me started on their fake farms. That is
I really
beyond.
Want to go, because if they're so bloody wonderful, let's see how they're doing it on one of those. But anyway, that's my product. But I really
for those who don't like, for those who are listening that don't know what we're talking about, there are names of farms on food products in, I don't know if it's just Tesco or whether there are other supermarkets doing it. These are not real farms. They're fictional. No. They are literally marketing created that don't exist to make you feel as a consumer like you're connected to your farmer. And it's not even a real fucking farmer.
No.
Like, that is how deep, like, it's just beyond.
It's fraud.
It's beyond anything. For those who are listening who don't understand that happens, like, what? I looked up a brand that I started seeing in Sainsbury's a couple of weeks ago. I was like, what is this? I can't remember the brand now. I can't remember the name of it, but it was starting to appear on everything. And it wasn't a farm name, but it was like they were trying to do, and I was like, how can a brand come out of nowhere and be across? It wasn't just on food, it was like all consumables, it was all over the store. So I looked it up, I just Googled it. I didn't have to do any like crazy detective work. I Googled it saying, what is this brand in Sainsbury's? And basically they just rebranded their basics range to look like it's a brand, like it's not Sainsbury's Basics anymore. So you're not buying cheap stuff. You're buying from a company that's called whatever the name might come to. And I was like, Jesus, it's so discombobulating, because it's literally tricking people. And it's only because I'm really nosy and I look at everything that's around going, what is that? Where's that come from? Who is that? Who's behind that? And it's just completely made up. It's just to make people feel better for buying a cheaper product.
Yeah,
it's completely fictional.
The one that got me was the pre-packed slices of chicken, and it had the fake name in it. And I thought, let's have a look at it. Yeah, produce of Thailand. So, okay.
Really?
Yeah. Fuck. It's just like you can't make it up, but Tesco are making it up as they go
literally.
Literally. So it's I'd love to go to one of those farms. One of those. Next time they're coming out doing the audit with me, I'll ask him, are you off to whatever the fake? Are you going to that farm this afternoon? Catch a bugger out. Yeah. But it's like I said, it's a part of it, and I just find it massively frustrating, and it pisses me off no end that you've got a situation where we are having to jump through every single hoop around welfare, environment, this, that, and the other, and then they're dragging in. Well, I think I'd be generous saying second grade produce from overseas. Where do they do any farm inspections there? No. So it's used very much as a tool to bash us over the head, and to sort of use it as a point scoring mechanism to, if you don't tick all these boxes, we will smack you on the price, sort of thing. But I think just coming back, like the variance in cost of production on farms would be probably a limiting factor on that, because you'd piss some people off and other people would be over the moon. And it can't be done on a case by case, on a farm by farm basis, because that would just never work. But then at the moment, it isn't working, and that's just a flat price across the board. But everybody's got different financing costs. Everybody, interest rates have gone up. A friend of mine, just before Christmas, interest rates have gone up again, because the retailers said either up your game and you sort of reinvest in new facilities or get out. So he, again, next generation following on, invested the money. His financing costs, because interest rates have gone up 82,000 a year. So combined with the milk price drop and the increase in interest rates, he was nearly 240 grand a year worse off than he was last year. So he said, how the hell do I deal with that?
And is he paying cost on that as well? So do you guys have massive overdrafts that you're paying huge interest rates on, or how do you?
You find me a farm at the moment, particularly in Wales, that isn't using their overdraft facility.
Yeah.
You
and
won't.
their overdrafts, you may as well be using a credit card to buy stuff and not paying off.
Correct. And again, like I said earlier about mining balance sheets, that's what farming has become in the last couple of years. We're we should be in a circus, because by fuck we can juggle, because that's all we're doing.
I love it.
That's all we're doing at the moment is juggling workload and money. Crazy, absolutely crazy. And again, as I said right at the start, everybody needs a farmer at least twice a day.
Yeah, and you could argue even several times a day, because if you have milk in your tea, then it's not even just meal times, right? It's all the time. And,
no, exactly.
And anyone who goes, oh well, I don't. There's no one that doesn't use a farmer.
No, nobody.
They don't exist.
It doesn't matter what your diet orientation is. You are reliant on a farmer.
On a farmer. What looking for the right question.
I don't like the sound of this.
Well, no, I'm trying to, so I like helping people. I like solving problems, and the way to do that is with the right questions. But I'm just, I look at the enormity of what you guys deal with, and I go, where the fuck do we start? Like, how do you even?
It's almost the case of you've got to burn the house down to build the right one. And
that's kind of where my mind was going. It's like the disruptors are the ones that start doing it completely differently. They don't try and change the system.
No.
Which is what you're talking about. But then how do you do that?
It's there's so much of this would automatically fall into place if the relationship between consumer and farmer was dismantled and rebuilt. There was so much of this would fall into place, because again, as I said at the start, art of good business, being a good middleman, but by Jesus, they've taken that to another level. So you've got a consumer which has had their own spend manipulated on where the retailer can drive the biggest margin, but you've got a situation where the farmer, the producer, is being manipulated, and his morale is being bastardized by the retailer through paperwork. And literally, it's if you knew the ins and outs of every single bit of when an auditor turns up to your farm, and then you'd walk into the supermarket and you'd literally just grab your 500 gram block of cheese, or your bloody yogurts, or your 2 pint of milk, you would have, it would completely reevaluate the way you have the relationship with that food product, because you'd think, Jesus Christ, these poor bastards that have gone through this to produce that food, and I'm just here to pick it up, and I'm just going to walk to the till, I'm going to pay for it, I'm going to pour it in my tea, or I'm going to grate it on my beans and jacket spud.
And then worse, forget about it, and then it goes off, and I just chuck it away without a second thought. That's devastating as well, because it's so devalued. Totally.
But they historically been used as loss leaders, but liquid milk in particular, the value added products. But it's like I said, you've almost got to burn it all down and start again. It just needs complete restructuring about the fairness and equality. And again, this is for consumer and producer, because you have to remember as well that a retailer's business model falls apart unless they've got footfall, and they will do whatever it takes to get that buyer through the door. Whatever it takes. But historically, again, speaking as a dairy farmer, sorry for sounding selfish, but again, speaking as a dairy farmer, milk has been used as a loss leader. It's one of the staples. People walk in there, it's one of the first things that goes in the trolley is milk. It's for a brew.
And also, it's known that most people don't know how much a litre of milk is anyway, so it's used as a loss leader, but no one's actually price checking milk anyway.
I'll let you into
Really?
a secret. I'll let you into a secret. Until the week before last, I didn't have a bloody clue because I hadn't looked at it for about 18 months. And I did a little video for a Twitter account I'm part of. And the variation in milk price, I knew what I was getting paid on farm, but the variation in milk price varied from £1.08 for a 1 litre carton to 68 pence for a 6 pinter carton. So the variation in milk price was huge. But as I said, I'd love to know what volumes are sold in the 1 pinter, 2 pinter, 6 pinter, 4 pinter, cartons. I'd love to know what the volume is, because I've got a sneaky feeling that going on the number of cages that had the 2 and 4 pint cartons there, I would say that is their number one. That is their number one. So that was at the higher end of the value. So it would have been in the 90 pence to a pound range. So they're getting 90 pence plus a litre for what we're getting paid 40p.
Yeah.
There's 50 minimum 50p of profit in there somewhere. So yeah. Mad. But like I said, that would be my thing. Is it's not almost. It probably does need burning down to start again.
And if you were, maybe it's time to talk about, the fishing and things that you've got on the farm. But if you were doing it, if you were going to say, I'm going to start farming all over again from nothing, and time was no issue and money was no issue, and like, what would you do differently to what you do now? Would you? I'm hoping you're not going to say I just wouldn't farm because it's nuts, because that's what gets said, right? When I think I really want to get into farming because I want to understand this and do more and start figuring out like helping and all of that world. It's like, it's a nuts thing to do,
Yeah.
I mean,
if I was going to do it all,
do?
I'd probably do it in a different country where both government and retailers have a better relationship with the farmer, instead of trying to fuck them over at every opportunity. I went out to Canada back in 2009. And I couldn't get over it. The moment they found out I was a farmer, honestly, God, I was treated like a king. It was like, wow. So I would probably choose a different country. Just not for the potential to grow and this, that, and the other, just for how the government or the industry as a whole, but the government treated their farmers. I know that things have been a little bit hostile in Canada since, but
sure,
but if I had my time over again, I'd probably choose somewhere different. And then you have to question then, well, hang on, if you're saying that, why are you sort of looking at sentiment earlier on about multi-generational, businesses, this, that, and the other? But we've had friends that have done it, not that far from us here now, that, up 6 or 7, 8 years ago, and went out to Manitoba out in Canada. Literally living the dream. Have been living the dream. It's opportunities have come their way. Great quality of life, work-life balance. Bear with a second. I've just got someone to message you quickly. Sorry.
Yeah, of course. Don't worry. I'm fully aware that taking you out of your day this much is a lot.
Yeah. I was going to say, because with regards to the fishing, project that got
so tell us, well, so you just, because we did this before we came on live, so just tell everyone the story of the fishing lake and what happened, so that everyone understands what else you do and what you're passionate about, for those who don't know you.
Well, I've always enjoyed my fishing ever since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. And yeah, basically COVID, the lockdowns came along. I couldn't go fishing, we weren't allowed out, couldn't go to the river, couldn't go to a pond, couldn't go for a pint, the script.
Yeah.
We had the pond here. There was a small little pond here. And we thought, to hell with it. Come on, we'll bring the kit over and we'll tidy it up a bit. Well, in amongst tidying it up a bit, it ended up getting a bit bigger, and then it got a bit bigger and bigger and bigger. So we've ended up with like a 3 acres plus 30-foot deep pond of water You know, we stocked it with trout, and I wasn't going to open it initially. It was just going to be kept for family and friends. And anyway, last spring, the friends started coming up and was like, "Oh, come on, you've got to open this. Don't be so bloody selfish. Open it up, you tight git." So I said, "Fine." I said, "Right, I'll open it up. But if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it properly, because that's my nature. It's got to be done bob on, or I won't do it." So we opened, when was it? End of August. Yeah, first week of September last year. And it's been a hell of a lot busier than I thought it'd be, put it that way. And we've had 100 plus a month coming through the gate. Feedback has all been pretty positive. I've only had to ban one person, which
There's always one.
Oh, there's always one twat, and he was a twat. So he was removed, and adios, don't come back. But it's been really enjoyable. I met some awesome people. You know, from seeing a dad with the young kids coming along to have a go, through to a Normandy veteran, you know, in his 100th year, fit as a flea. You know, lovely guy, stories to tell. He's a little bit perplexed as well, coming back to farming. He's a little bit perplexed to what is happening to agriculture. He spent his whole life in a rural community, you know, post-war. And as he said, you know, some of the things he's seen going on now, he said, "I didn't lie about my age and walk up that beach on the 6th of June, 44. He said, to see what's happening to this country." And I thought, fair play to you, fair play to you. And he was quite open and honest, and he stood out on the veranda here, ramrod straight back. You know, you can tell he's military, you know, through and through. His shoes are the shiniest I'd ever seen, immaculately dressed. And we were talking about farming in particular. And like he said, "I didn't lie about my age to walk up that beach on the 6th of June, 44, to see what's happening to this country now." And I thought, you know, that's respect to that man. You know, and it's like I said, it's just, we've got a really loyal core following here. Again, some brilliant people come through the door. You know, built up long-standing friendships and, you know, relationships in quite a short period of time. And it's an interesting one as if you look at it from a business perspective. We are price takers on our farm, whereas this is very much a price setter. So if the cost of fish, me buying fishing, creeps up, then I just have to put the price up a couple of quid, and it's covered. So there's no risk. It's just someone come to the door. That's all.
That's all right.
Yeah, I've forgotten I was double booked today.
What time do you need to go?
In about 5 minutes.
That's all right. We can do that. Yeah. So if you're starting to, so can the trout fishing actually start making money? Are you charging for that properly? So people are coming over, you know. Like,
it is. It's this is where the interesting bit is. I mean, we've actively been encouraged to diversify, right? That's been the thing. Oh, well, you know, if there isn't enough money in farming, you have to diversify.
Yeah.
And I don't mean this patronizing or insulting in any way, shape or form. But it's borderline impossible. We work 18-hour, 90-hour weeks, okay? And they want us to diversify to entertain and humour people that generally work 35 to 40 hours a week. And that's not meant in a derogatory way, shape. But it's just been honest. So this year, like I said, it's a bit of a pet project. It's making a few quid. Like I said, we've got really loyal core following of people, and they're respectful of the facilities. They're careful. They're polite. We have a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong, a hell of a lot of fun. And you know, we socialise a bit together. You go for a pint and things like that. So it's just, how can I put it? It's just been a nice addition to farming. Yeah, effectively. That's what it is. But do I see it growing? Very careful of running before walking, but I do see in the next sort of 4 or 5 years, particularly this side of things, developing further with potentially accommodate. Because honestly, if you're ever down in Pembrokeshire, you get the chance to come down, by all means call on in. It's a lovely spot on a nice day. It isn't so nice today because it's chucking it down with rain now, but yeah, no, it's a nice part of the world, Pembrokeshire. And
yeah, it's beautiful.
home. It's home, luckily.
Yeah. And if you look at your farm and you're saying, well, we can grow some bits there and then you can add accommodation, and then does all of your milk get taken away, or do you sell anything locally, or is it just like it's not worth it because then adding that in is really messy and complicated for what it actually does?
Hugely complicated for what it does.
Yeah.
All goes on the tanker, all of it goes into cheese. They're just
because you've then got to deal with pasteurizing, homogenizing, bottling, packaging, selling, storing, all of that, right? It's like
staff is the issue. Staff is the issue, and
which is cost.
Well, it's cost is one aspect, but when you complicate things to that extent, and staff are notoriously unreliable. Okay, we are very lucky about who helps us on the farm. When busy periods in the summer, we are very, very lucky, and there are others out there that aren't so lucky, but staff are notoriously unreliable. And that's the issue. The more complex you create things, the more reliance you have on staff, you are very, very exposed. And not being funny, it's why you're seeing more robotics coming into dairying, into the no aspect. And it's down to staff, but also reliability. And I can remember being out in Holland about 7-8 years ago, and a Dutch guy there on farm saying, well, I asked him, why did he go down robots rather than a milking parlour and physically milking? And he said to me, Steve, he said, robots, no sick pay, no holiday. I can. Fair enough. I didn't need to know anymore. I just got it. But affordability is the thing. And, for us, like I said earlier, I'd need 10 of them. Well, that's £1 million straight out the gate. Before any infrastructure cost, that's £1 million worth of equipment on an industry that's going to make money 1 year in 5.
Yeah.
No, you.
Yes, huge. I'm aware you have to go. If you've got time for one more question.
Go on, you crack on, yeah.
I'd love your opinion on farms like, well, not like Riverford, but like Riverford, who have now become this massive supermarket in and of themselves. I don't know whether you know anything about them. I don't know anything about them other than I do use them and have done some stuff with them in the past.
I love it.
How have they managed to do, like, I look at them and just go, and I'd love to, Guy Watson's on my hit list for speaking to you, just go, how the fuck did you do this? Like, how do you even begin? Because they are dealing with like the numbers of employees they must have for the hundreds of thousands of boxes they do.
Yeah. How long's it been running? How long's Riverford been running?
Decades, 50 years, longer. Go. And it was already a family farm. And it was already a family farm, right? So he took over his father's farm.
Yeah, but it's done really well in the last couple of years. Predominantly, it's really kicked on in the last couple of years. And the old saying, every overnight success takes at least 10 years.
100%. Yeah.
And you can see it with this. It's Guy has worked it. He's a genius, okay, but he's worked it. He's poked and prodded a number of different avenues, but he's found one. Bang! Christ, this works. This is awesome. And they've absolutely nailed it. They've nailed, but they've done an awesome job of brand creation.
Yeah.
And have you ever come across a guy called Rory Stewart?
No, I don't think so.
Are you on TikTok?
No.
Google.
I'm happy to look him up. Yeah.
Rory Stewart. He is basically a brand and marketing. Well, he's a genius, to be honest with you. Honestly, have a look at some of his videos. Okay. But you can see the format that, like Riverford. If you watch some of Rory's sort of videos, he's talked a lot about KFC and he's about Guinness and Red Bull. Red Bull being the most disgusting drink on the planet, but how they basically running a Formula One team off the back of the most disgusting drink there is. So he sort of looked at Guinness about how you can spin marketing. You know, Guinness, it's a bar staff hate them because it takes so long to pour.
Yeah.
Consumers get pissed off because it takes so long to pour. The only enjoyable bit is the taste, but they managed to spin the slowness of the getting it from the barrel to the consumer. They managed to spin that into positive, you know, about how good things come to those that wait, sort of thing.
Yes,
Or perfection takes time.
Yeah.
You know, and with Riverford, they just nailed it because it's simplistic, but it's uniformed. It's the produce is bang on every time, without question. If they say it's going to be there, it'll be there. So it's the service and how uniformed it is what gets them the win effectively. And I just think it's an awesome business model, awesome, because they have controlled their own destiny. And yes, their risk is the customer base and affordability. That's their risk. But in terms of everything else, he's a genius. Absolutely smashed it. And I just think it's a brilliant model. How that's not realistic for every single farmer. You see, that's the thing. But again, it comes back to this whole thing that the retailer has manipulated the consumer and the bloody producer into producing volume by paying them a pittance. So, oh Christ, you've got to produce shitloads of milk or a hell of a lot of cattle because you're on a tight margin, so you need more and more and more. You know, and then manipulated the bloody consumer into buying what the retailer wants them to buy. You know, so it's but no, honestly, look up Rory Stewart, genius. Absolutely.
Yes, I will. Thank you.
And try and get him on here because he is. He's one of my favourite people. I think he's fantastic.
Do you know him or you follow him and just love his stuff?
I follow him.
Okay.
And
will you send me a link to some of his stuff? I'll look him up, but just in case there are like a load of Rory Stewarts and I can't find him, do send me a link so that I can make sure I've got the right guy.
I would love to know him because I've watched a lot of his stuff and tried to work it back to like the farm is slightly tricky, you know, because we're not a brand, but relating it back to the sort of trout fishery, there's things I can do that he is sort of, it's almost like tricks the mind. But how you can spin everything into a positive and consumer, you know, continuous trade, etc. But he is a genius, absolute genius. And I think agriculture as an industry as a whole learn from him on how, you know, we not sort of promote the industry, but get the engagement with the public.
I mean, it is, right? Like if you guys are going to like bring stuff back home, you've got to get good at that, right? The reason the supermarkets are good at this is because they do that stuff and they brand everything theirs. And then it's they're selling it. So like you guys as the farmers, like your milk's gone into cheese. I'll never know where your milk is in the cheese because Sainsbury's or Lidl or Aldi or whoever has gone, this is our cheese. It's like, no, it isn't. But that's what they've done. They've branded it. They've done a brilliant job to go, look, Sainsbury's doesn't make frickin' cheese and it certainly doesn't milk cows, but they take the credit.
Yeah, they do.
So it's a really interesting place to go. Is that the upskill and the upgrade that farming needs, or farmers individual need to find the bit, you know, like you're talking about trout farm, you know, the trout side of it and fishing, but actually, is that the way that then, you know, things start to filter out and then you add things on and maybe you can do something a bit different and then before you know it, you know, you're going down that route. Because I think that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for like, what is it? Like, what's the answer that starts to help farmers figure out their version so that they can interact direct, you know, ultimately in some way, shape or form direct with the consumer. You're not doing it with the milk, but actually what you just said is you're doing it with the trout fishing. And then people are coming to the farm. And then if people are coming to the farm, it's like, from a business point of view, you would go, well, what else can I upsell, cross-sell, and how much of the supply chain can I control? That's all that big business does. That's all that the supermarkets do. They go, how much control can I have of everything so that I get cuts all the way through? So it has, you know, on an individual level, there's never going to be one answer, but it's like, what's that for each farmer, where they actually start to like take back the power and take back the ownership, and consumers can come like consumers are starting to come on your farm. They're not coming
Yeah.
for milk, but once
No.
they're there, it's like the supermarkets. You said the supermarkets only succeed with footfall. Well,
Yeah.
if your farm suddenly gets footfall,
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Oh. Oh, she's frozen. Her bloody screen is frozen, and I think she's winding things up here. But it's is she back? No. Yeah, hers. Mine's fine.
You see in the Northern Lights.
Oh, that must be amazing, yeah.
It was every night.
Oh, really? Yeah, because I've known people that go all that way and then they don't get to see them, and then they come over and someone up in Scotland's got a great photo or something. That's really interesting. Because they say that they had
So imagine trying to bring 3 of them up at the same time.
huge.
They're massive.
God, it's like a small child, isn't it?
It's got designs in his back bench.
Oh, she's gone.
Is it like the speed? Is it like much better in this? Like the photos not do it justice?
That was just taken on this phone.
Is it?
Yeah.
Amazing though.
Yeah,
I bet the
doesn't
sky out there is so clear that now all the lights and stuff.
It smells different. It tastes different. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I don't mean like clean.
It's tasty.
Wow.
Yeah,
Amazing.
it's incredible. Like every night I was just going out after having tea. Like just watching this. You're there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
that's in the word.
yeah, I would love to see them. There are parts of Wales that they've seen them from before. Maybe
Yeah.
it's got to be like the right time and the right skies and things.
Yeah, there's certain people saying.
I think she's got to put 50p in the meter again. Are you in a rush?
No, it's fine, honestly. I appreciate you squeezing me in.
Okay.
You finish up. It's fine.
Oh,
I've got
I
a
think-
lovely coffee.
sorry about that. My internet just went right at the end, and I'm also aware you have to go, so we should.
It's okay. It's okay. Yeah, don't panic at all. But
Cool.
yeah, just summing up, I think farming wise, as I said several times, you know, the next 12 months there is going to be fundamental change. I think you will see a period of the industry contracting, just through sheer economic pressure, regardless of regulations and bureaucracy. I think just financial pressure alone. But in the words of Clarkson, you know, when he said that time on his show, you know, you see a farmer in a pub, put your hand on his shoulder and buy him a pint.
Yeah.
He is actually right, because it is such a bloody battle at the moment. And I don't want thanks for being a farmer. That's not what it's about. It's like I chose this sort of vocation in life. There was no pressure placed on me by my parents at all. Likewise, you know, my brother never had any interest. It wasn't like, oh, you must come home on the farm. You know, he went off. He went to uni. He wanted to be an RAF pilot. Unfortunately, it didn't quite work out because he had a slight hearing defect. So he went into uni. He's now the boss of environmental health department within a local council. It's not, I don't want thanks. I chose it, but it's just, I'd love to have more time to sort of inform and make the public aware of what the hell is going on. And it's not that we are whinging, moaning all the time. There's a bloody good reason why we're having to do these things, and it's just keeping everybody in the loop. And it's retailer and government are doing without cutting loose with swear words. It's bloody awful what is going on at the moment, because they are jeopardizing ours and yours futures through reducing food production, and it's not right. It's not right at all.
What's the biggest thing that people who listen to this can do that does make the biggest difference? What do you ask of people who, what do you all of us ask of all of us?
Shorten the supply chain. Shorten the supply chain. Butcher, your farm shops, farmers markets. Yes, I know they are slightly dearer, but not always.
I was going to say not always. I buy lamb direct from the farmer, and it's a lot cheaper. It's so much cheaper than going to the supermarket, and it's so much nicer. To know where it's coming from. I know the lamb in the supermarkets come from a farmer, but half the time, because if I do shopping online for like grocery shopping, Sainsbury's, for example, it goes New Zealand or British lamb. I'm like, well, like that anyway. That's a whole other conversation about that. That's insane.
From a public point of view, just shorten the supply chain. You will get better value. I guarantee with the butchers, you will get better value. You go into your local butcher, you will get better value, better quality as well. And that's it for me. Is just shorter supply chains.
And support, and I really like that. And I think one of the things for me that we don't have a farmers market in Newport, and I'm like, actually being part of starting that up so that there's a place, that you can go once a week to buy everything. Actually having that really work.
There is definitely, but that's great, because again, thanks for the opportunity to come on, because it's
thanks for sharing.
It's not very often a farmer gets a chance to sort of hear his thoughts and frustrations and where the world is going wrong.
Well, and also I don't think people don't get the opportunity to hear you either. And this is what's so mad about the disconnect between the food that we eat every day and we don't know who you are. I know, and actually I've never met Lorna where I get my lamb. My mum gets it in Abergavenny and then she brings it down to me, and then I fill my freezer up, and then when it's gone, and I know that I've just had my last delivery of lamb until the autumn now, and then we'll move to eating more beef and chicken because we're coming into the summer. But it's that, it's just so simple what you said, shorten the supply chain, and even if people listen to this, you can't do all, I can't do all of it. I use Riverford, I use Lorna, I use my local butchers my mum's local butchers up in Abergavenny, because then I know where all the meats come from. And I do use the Sainsbury's delivery, but it's every piece that I can do, I do. And it's I think that's the other thing people maybe to get is that we don't have to start doing our entire shop in a farmer's market every week. And how much can we do that, actually, like you say, I love that, shortening the supply chain.
It's quite simple. It's quite a simple thing.
It's really simple. It's shorten the supply chain where you can. And that's it. And it's like we've got down here. There's lots of little pop-up shops, small farmers. They will sell half a lamb. They are selling homemade preserves, and it's great. There's one in the lay-by just up the road from me on the A40 and they're flat out busy because they're not robbing people either, price-wise. They're just, I don't need to charge more because the money's coming back to me. It's not like there's 20 people in the middle clipping the ticket on the way through. So it's just wherever you can shorten the bloody supply chain. It's quite simple, really. And farmers hang in there as long as you can, because I think there's something magical about a pendulum swing, that when stuff gets painful enough and when people get sick enough and when people get fed up and start to really understand on a mass level the food that they're being fed, that actually they'll seek it out. And one of the things that I wish for is that those you guys are still there when people really come looking. And I think COVID opened people's eyes a little bit. There was a lot of downside to COVID, but there was a lot of positive. But it's everyone remembering that could happen again. If we don't support people being there.
I think it's look, we do our best, okay, but ultimately the economics don't lie, and that's the unfortunate thing. And in many cases you will see people take charge of their own destiny and say, do you know what, I'm stopping before I destroy any more equity I have left on the farm. And other people, it'll be taken out of their, it won't be their decision, it'll be the banks. And that, it's just a crying shame. But it's agriculture farming is one of the last blue collar bloody industries left, you know, after the mining, you know, except the steelworks is now gone from Port Talbot. We're one of the last sort of blue collar industries there is. And it's worrying times, and I don't want to be too doom and gloom. Like I said, it's just the reality of it, and you can't lie. You just got to sort of say it how it is, and it is particularly bloody challenging. But anyway, to end on a positive, shorter supply chains. Use your local butchers. You know, just get into them, and it's awesome.
I wonder. I've got a game called Let's See What Rory Stewart can do for farmers, because that's the other thing. Is like, who else cares enough about farmers to start getting involved in your businesses to give you the skills or the ideas or the whatever that have done it for, you know, X, Y, and Z brands? Because actually, when farmers start to become brands, what's possible is anything. Because then people are like, come on, give me what you got. What have you got? I want to buy from you. So, you know, that's
agreed. Right. I better.
Steve, thank you for your time and for everyone else who's had to deal with stuff on your behalf.
Yeah, no, absolute pleasure. And I hope I didn't swear too much. But I think I've sworn more on another podcast, so we're all good. And I will put if you send me a link for the fishing side of what you do. Sure.
These things have a magic way of, you know, someone goes, I really want to go and see. I'm already thinking of one of my clients who absolutely loves fishing, who would probably love coming your way and that kind of thing. And it's, you know, it's almost like you've already started to build that brand, and however we can help with, you know, having those links there. And
awesome. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
I've got to come and say something and have a look. And thank you again so much for your time and sharing your knowledge, honestly, so that we can all understand the industry better.
Pleasure. Lovely. We shall keep in contact.
Yes, definitely. Thanks a lot, Steve. Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.